Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
It's one of the coolest double majors out there with massive colonial heritage. You go to William and Mary, you show up, and like, duh, you're going to take economics. That's what you do if you're Seth Carpenter now at Morgan Stanley. But you double barrel it with French in economics. Was this your mother's idea?
Good to see you too, Tom. In fact, I was a French major before I was an economics major. I did a bunch of advanced placement classes in high school and sort of started right into the sort of advanced classes. You know, believe it or not, I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and someone said...
Deepest sympathies.
Somebody said to me, you know, if you want to be a really good lawyer, develop your analytical skills, take a few economics classes, can't do you any harm, and you just might learn something about analytics. And boy, a few classes in, I went straight for I went deep into economics, and it didn't look back.
Some of these first-rate minds, which you've had the privilege of being with and working with as an equal, is someone like Richard Claret of Columbia or a guy named Bernanke at your Princeton. And they have a massive respect for the x-axis. The financial media is completely driven by change in the y-axis and all that. Ethan Harris leading the charge here, ex-Bank of America, that we don't know where the x-axis is, and we're going to have what mathiness is, an asymptote effort, a glide path out somewhere. Do you have a clue at Morgan Stanley where the x-axis is for our Fed?
If I can interpret the x-axis here to mean the time dimension and sort of how things go out over time, I think that's going to be the key. We have a pretty strongly held view that inflation, for example, is coming down, and so as a result, the Fed's going to come down come off the peak rate. Exactly when that happens, getting that timing exactly right is tricky. We were very heartened by last week's CPI print because we've been telling people for a long time.
Ellen's been leading on that.
Exactly. Inflation's coming down. And we've been getting tons of pushback left, right, and center. And then the CPI print came out and it made the story, at least for a while, easier to tell. We think there's more to come there, but exactly getting the timing right is super hard.
Tom, the oldest football rivalry in the South, it is not Alabama, Auburn, or Mississippi, Georgia. Yeah. It is William & Mary and the University of Richmond, like 130 years. So those we are rivals.
George Washington was on the sidelines.
Exactly. Hey, Seth, how concerned are you and your colleagues at Morgan Stanley about the consumer here? Because we're hearing more and more data that certain folks are doing well out there, but a lot of folks aren't. If you don't own stocks or bonds or real estate, this inflation thing's hitting you really hard. How do you guys think about that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think there's a lot of heterogeneity. I don't think there's any two ways about it. You can see some of the deterioration in credit conditions. You can start to see credit card balances starting to rise after people went through over, a few years ago, all the excess savings from the fiscal transfers. So I think there's no question whatsoever that there is heterogeneity across the consumer. But there's also heterogeneity across what consumers are spending on. So if, we got retail sales, people made a lot about that coming in soft. If you look at the first quarter where we have an entire quarter's worth of GDP data for consumer spending, durable goods was negative quarter on quarter, non-durables was about flat quarter on quarter, services was holding up. So again, more heterogeneity. And I think that's the name of the game when we have what we have said for a couple of years is going to be a soft landing where we're going to have slowing in the economy. We're going to have restraint from monetary policy. Inflation is going to eventually go away. That's not going to be a recipe for everything happening smoothly, uniformly across the board.
Well, then that argues, it seems like, for cutting rates now. Do you think the Fed should be cutting rates now, or is this wait and see approach maybe the best way to go?
A bit of both. So I think they easily could have cut rates already a little bit, come off the peak. I don't think there's any hurry for them to slash rates. The economy is not dropping off of a cliff. Our forecast is still more aggressive than the markets. We're looking for 3 cuts this year, starting in September. Again, to get back to Tom's point about if the time axis if time is on the x-axis, then that's where a little bit of the uncertainty is. The Fed, Chair Powell, his colleagues, they saw the strong inflation data in the first quarter. They were surprised at the upside. We were surprised at the upside. Understandably, they said, let's make sure that the trend is still down. And so I think that helps to explain a little bit of the wait and see. But directionally, I think they're fine to come off of the peak.
The heterogeneity. Do we underestimate productivity but its efficacy to the haves versus its efficacy to the have-nots. To me, that's original territory. We need to study that out 5 years.
So I don't think I disagree. I think there's clearly AI, one of the key topics. People are talking about it now. People will continue to talk about it for a long time. At Morgan Stanley in Research, we just put out a piece recently. My colleague over in London, Ed Stanley, pulled all of our equity analysts around the globe and said, take each of your individual stocks that you cover and let's classify them as enablers of AI, as sort of beneficiaries, as maybe people getting disrupted by AI, and see what's going on. I think this is categorically a topic that's going to drive the narrative for a long time, not just through NVIDIA, but NVIDIA is clearly part of it. And so then the question becomes, who wins and how do they win? And I think returns to capital, returns to some companies are going to stay very, very strong. And to your point, Tom, those returns are not going to be shared uniformly across the income distribution.
Do you think that AI makes the global economy more productive? Is there a way to measure that? Or does that go into GDP forecasts or inflation forecasts?
I think great set of questions. I think it's hard to believe that it will not make things more productive. And the way I like to think about it is, I'm doing a forecast. There's a lot of uncertainty. I can think of different possible outcomes, and you can put different probabilities on those outcomes. But I kind of see either AI is going to not make people more productive, or it will make people more productive, and the average of 0 and something positive is positive. So I think directionally it's pretty clear. The time horizon is hard. The measurement of it is very, very hard. So one of the favorite examples people love is about call centers, right? So I remember last summer, we're coming into the summer season. This time last year, I was booking our family travel to Europe, and it was a disaster. And I was on the phone on 2 different occasions for 2 hours straight.
No.
You can imagine AI at its glory could take that down to 5 minutes. And if every customer goes from 2 hours to 5 minutes, every single person involved will say that's higher productivity.
Yep.
But if they don't change the number of workers, if they don't change the number of flights that get sold, I'm really not clear that's going to show up at all in the GDP data, and yet it's clearly going to help things.
We got to have you come back next time. Drag Zentner along with you. You two are on speaking terms.
Not just that, we have our offices next to each other, and we talk every single day.
So you have to talk fishing with her. You have to do trout.
I listen. That's where I listen.
We'll
She's
do a
the
half
guru.
hour or even 3 blocks. Bring Zentner along with you next time.
Fantastic.
I think it'd be a great conversation. I got like 10 more questions we didn't even get to. Seth Carpenter drives economics at the new Morgan Stanley. Thank you so much.